Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Sarah Jantausch. She is the founder of SRJ Coaching and Consulting and creator of the values based career method. This method helps individuals to unlock the hidden job market and ditch burnout while creating a career move that is rooted in their core values. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to get started and chat today about the hidden job market.
Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about how one can tap into the hidden job market. But before we come to that, let's understand a bit more about you so that people understand about your journey and who they are listening to.
Well, thank you so much. I founded SRJ Coaching Consulting to help other people as I navigated all sorts of career transitions. But that started many years ago. I had a successful government career, and during a transition of my own, started networking and identifying what was next for me. And through that process, I realized that I was horrible at networking. I would go out, go to an event, try to talk to people, have coffee chats, those types of things. And as an introvert, some of those things were challenging, being more shy, not wanting to actually wanting to listen more than talk myself. And so after trial and error, I started having really successful coffee chats. And this was based on some guiding principles and a process that I developed. But the reason that's important is because through that, I identified the hidden job market. I started getting coffee chats and having these really great connections with people and being offered positions or interviews for jobs that weren't posted. And that was my first experience identifying this. So the hidden job market is just anything, any job that's not posted or that could be created. And those are usually identified through networking. So I continued on this journey and ended up realizing that I started to love networking as an introvert. And so I started to teach it. I was invited to universities and conferences to start talking about this process for networking to be able to access the hidden job market. And then eventually I launched a business and started career coaching for other individuals to help them along with this. And that's when I created the values-based career method. So that's a little bit of the backstory, but it's been a wild journey so far and I've really enjoyed it. And there's so much opportunity through networking and the hidden job market today, especially with our job market.
Right, Sarah. So now let's understand about your values-based career method. What is this values-based career method, so that people can understand what this is all about?
Absolutely. So the values-based career method is rooted in your values. And I'll explain why this is important in just a second. But the first and foremost piece that we work on is identifying core values. So what I found is most people, including myself in the early parts of my career, didn't know what my work values were. And by doing that, I was chasing promotions and job titles and all sorts of other types of work that I thought I wanted based on my education, training, family influences, and all of those things. But would continuously turn out that something was missing. And it wasn't until I looked deeply into those values. And what I recommend folks do is identify their top 5 values. And you can do this through a values card sort. I use a couple of activities in my practice, but there's lots of opportunities for things online as well to identify those top 5. And it's really hard to decide, but deciding is the most important step because from there you can start to identify maybe you haven't had a good career experience and maybe it's because some of your values aren't aligned with the jobs that you're taking. We see a lot of job turnover and job hopping these days. And usually it's because there's a fit issue because most people don't understand their work values and aren't intentionally seeking that out. For an example, if you're really innovative and collaborative and creative, you might not want to work in a really traditional industry or organization. And so by identifying those 5 values, from there, I work with my clients and individuals to identify their strategy to align their work in the world. Usually that involves a major career pivot because we usually go after jobs that align with our education or major, and they might necessarily be a good fit for us and who we are at our core.
Right, Sarah. Now, in terms of the job hunt or job search that one is doing? What are the mistakes that they are making? Almost everyone has the same methodology. So I just want to understand where is the mistake part that is happening from people who are looking into this job. I will come to the hidden marketing part later on, but you can also include if you want to. I just want to, understand this part. What are the mistakes that they could be making while making their job search?
Yeah, the most common mistake that I see for individuals in their job search is going on job boards and scanning through hundreds or thousands of job postings and saving tons of them and having this really wide net. And then what happens is when they go to apply, they're overwhelmed, exhausted, and they don't even know where to go from there. So having that really wide net is really ineffective. What I find the solve for that is to identify a very narrow search strategy. So when you go onto a job posting website, you know your target salary, what kind of hybrid, remote, or in person work you want. And you really drill down so that when you hit search, you end up with less than 50 results, even better if it's 20. And then you can search and filter based on recent job history, because analysis paralysis is one of the most dangerous things for a job seeker. The second is going crazy and doing all of these applications at once, 50 applications in a day. What usually happens is the quality starts to decrease. What really works is the method of doing a little bit of action every day or every other day, because it builds. The Slight Edge is a great book that talks about this. And I just started Atomic Habits, started reading that. It starts to talk about those little actions that build. That's a really successful way to run a job search, because jobs these days, a good job usually takes 3 to 6 months to get. The third is not knowing what you want. Frequently, what will happen is you'll interview for a job, you'll get that job offer, you'll be so excited, and what takes over? Emotions. And once those emotions take over, that clear rational thinking of, wait, is this really what I want? Does it align with my values? That kind of goes out the window. So the solve for that is identifying what you want on the back end, so that, and that have it written down, so that when you get that offer, you can literally compare that offer side by side with what you said you wanted and identify and make a good decision for you based on your needs and your values.
Wonderful. Now, a lot of people who are already in jobs, how do they know that it's time for a job change? Obviously, having a fight with your boss or any colleague does not make that you feel like leaving the job, but then that's not the real sign. I want to understand: are there other signs that one can look out for in terms of if they need to make that change?
Absolutely. The most common ones we see are any form of burnout, quiet quitting. Also, there's this term called rage quitting. That's where you're talking about that fight with your boss, and you're like, oh, I want to just leave now. But there's slow things that start to build too. So if you get to the end of a year and you don't feel like you've grown at all in that job, and you're looking toward the next year and you're not sure how you want to develop or what you want to work on to grow as a professional, that's one of those like yellow or orange flags that starts to build before you get to that burnout. Because if we're not challenged and we're not growing in some ways, even if it's in a career that we want to be in for a long time, that's usually a sign that there's going to be some sort of burnout coming. Also, if you start to notice those, like you don't have those boundaries and you're starting to bring work home, you're working overtime and it might not necessarily be necessary. And there's that balance where you're not able to invest in other areas of your life. That's something we usually see really early on. It starts to start really early and eventually it builds and it creates that burnout cycle. So there are a couple of different things. And usually people who only focus on work and they kind of shut out those other areas of life, that's the biggest one that usually leads to really big career dissatisfaction. And I was one of them. I worked all the time and I wasn't investing in other areas of my life. And that was a big turning point for me that led me in many ways to creating this business and having that balance. And that's one of those things I also teach because it's so important. And those are things that we can do on an ongoing basis. Calm.com, as an example, has 7 different types of rest. It's online, you can check it out. Investing in some of those things outside really create that balance and well-being so that you don't encounter that burnout.
Wonderful. Now coming to the job market, hidden job market. Uh, is there a way? Is there a systematic way one can do that? You talked about networking and then come to know about the jobs not being posted, some one job here or there, or a few jobs here and there, and the companies. Help us understand, if one has to understand it in a good manner from you, what is the way to tap into this hidden job market?
Absolutely. Establishing and building relationships. And I know that sounds very general, but that is one of the easiest ways to access it. And what I mean by that is establishing and building out your network, and not just building it in a way that feels transactional. So most people, including myself, started their careers, didn't know any other way of networking. And it starts to feel transactional. And for me, I call it the ick. I've taken the ick out of the networking and created generosity-based networking because it works so much better, and found that for introverts and individuals like us who don't enjoy networking as much, it works. So here's what I mean by that. Establishing networking connections and relationships in a way that works for you. So for some people, that's going to networking events and talking to 20 people in a night. For others, it's networking one-on-one in short bits. So finding that sweet spot of what works for you so that it's sustainable, and building those relationships. Because here's how kind of like it works. So if you talk to somebody and, so let's say we connect, and then somebody 3 months from now asks me, hey, do you know of any good podcasts in India? I'm going to immediately think of you and recommend you. But what happens is our brains start to forget after 6 months, 9 months or so. And so we need to be continuously engaging and working with our network, but from two frameworks: giving back. So asking, hey, what are you working on and how can I help you? And without attachment, knowing that whatever goodness you put out into the world is going to boomerang back. Those two pieces are really important. And what starts to happen when you start to show people who you are and how you're giving, they get to know you, they like you, and then they start to think of you for various opportunities, and those opportunities start to open up. And just by the opportunity of talking to people, and then at the end of a conversation asking, hey, is there 1 to 3 resources or individuals you could connect me with so I could learn a little bit more about X, whatever your goal is, that starts to explode your network so fast. And those opportunities will come. As another example from my life, I was really passionate about a particular cause in my community, reached out to the organization. I thought maybe I could organize a donation drive. Sat down with the leader of that organization, and by the end of the conversation, they were asking me to join the board. And I got to sit on a nonprofit board for about 4 to 5 years and have a really big impact in my community. Something I never would have thought of. It's not a paid position, right? But it's one of those things that it's not posted online. You don't know it's accessible. But by really just engaging your network, and your network doesn't have to be millions of people, right? For the average person, it just needs to be people in your community and not necessarily the same people. And you can start to create those centers of influence. That's that next level of people that are speak your name in rooms that you're not in. And that's how opportunities start to flourish and come to you, because people are going to know you, like you, trust you, and start referring you for things and sharing opportunities with you that might not be posted.
Right, Sarah. In one-to-one meetings, in offline meetings, real world meetings, you meet a lot of people. But the one thing that can be challenging is, how do you keep your networking a bit focused? Because even though it might be from the same industry or slightly varied industries, you meet so many people and that can get lost. Now, another option is the online one. Online, you can focus it, but then that is not real. So how do you make sure that, firstly, in the offline ones, the real ones, you are meeting the right sort of more folks? Because you can't keep on doing that, just the networking part, and wait for God Almighty to be, to bless you with something that, though I certainly believe in that. Second part is in online thing. Again, how do you make sure that you are taken seriously? Because others are also looking at network which is going to help them and perhaps may not be looking at or for you. How does that work out?
Absolutely. I found that, working from that generosity model, most people you interact with are still working from the transactional networking model. And so 2 things are going on. You're operating a little bit differently than they are. And in many cases, there might be that imbalance of give and take. So it's something to be aware of. What I have found works really well is knowing what your goals are going into a conversation. So don't just network to network. Don't just talk to people to talk to people. If you're an extrovert and you love that, go forth and conquer if that's what you like to do. But for most people, I have found if you don't go into your networking conversations with some sort of goal or intent, they can become really unfocused and feel like they're not really a good use of time. And so what I recommend is creating a learning goal. And a learning goal is important. It's different than a traditional goal because a learning goal is not structured like a SMART goal. It's not necessarily time bound, but it's rooted in your curiosity. And the reason this is important is because curiosity turns off certain parts of our brain and turns on other parts of our brain. And when we're curious, we're more excited, engaged, and we're talking about what we want to be doing, what we're interested in, and we ask more better questions. And so the reason this is important is because if you've identified what your values are, talking about what we talked about a couple minutes ago, and you know what your end goal is, maybe you want to learn about a different career. Let's say you're a data scientist and you want to go into product management. You can start to create a learning goal around product management because that's a pretty big career pivot in many ways. And you can start to talk to people who are product managers or who have been product managers, and you can start to identify who those people are. And because you're naturally curious about it, crafting that learning goal is going to allow you to create really good, engaging questions that get the other person to talk about who they are, what they're doing. And frankly, people love to talk about themselves. And so it's a win-win in many ways because you're learning, you've shared with them that what you want to learn about. And most professionals I found love to share their knowledge and help each other out. And so it starts to become a win-win. But without that learning goal and knowing what your values and your bigger goals are, networking can really fall flat and start to feel like it's a waste of time. Absolutely.
Absolutely. There is much to learn from you about all these things, Sarah, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you, learn more from you, about you, get your services from SRJ Coaching and Consulting. So what's the best way for them to do so?
The best way is go to valuesbasedcareers.com. I've got a lot of resources there, including workshops. I have a monthly topical workshop. I have pop-up coaching office hours and a mindfulness for leaders session each month. Those are all of my free events. For those who want to invest a little bit more, maybe learn about networking or explore other services, those are on there as well. But I'd love to teach and engage with any of your listeners. You can also find me on LinkedIn. My profile is Sarah Jantausch.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having me.